Well, what time is it? 5:03. Maybe we'll give it like 1 or 2 more minutes and then start.
How's everyone doing? Since the silence seems to make people feel intimidated.
No, I wasn't saying that. I was just like, wow, there's so many people here. But yeah.
Where are you? Where are you based? I keep seeing your name in the emails, but I've never met you. I was asking Amrit, where are you based?
Oh, I'm in Los Angeles, well, San Fernando Valley. So, yeah.
Cool, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I've heard a lot about you. Seth over here can never shut up about you. No, I'm just kidding.
Question, the folks that are kind of like not in the collective, are they also filmmakers? Is that...
Lynette and Sultry, y'all want to share?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was just like me. I am not. I had a brief stint as a filmmaker, but I can't call myself that. I mostly do writing and performing.
Awesome. Cool.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, hi.
I'm Sultry. I go by they, them, sha, but all except all pronouns with love, though they and sha are my favorites. And I just wanted to share, I'm similar to Lynette. I've mostly done poetry, previous experience with organizing, music, and I've done a lot of like interviews that I feel like didn't honor me, as I feel like, you know, is like the common trajectory of our kind, X-Men, X-folks. And I'm very inspired by Tam Tran. I actually got to meet her in 2010 before she and Cynthia had passed, and so I'm very influenced, and I haven't seen all her work, but I'm inspired by just her legacy and what she means for our community. And the more that I go through this like jaded, jagged experience of having other people, especially like citizens, even if they're the same culture as me, share my story, it just like kind of fucks me up, and I just don't want to deal with that shit anymore. And I want to reclaim my story in a more, I just am intimidated by the technical aspects and probably like imposter syndrome and colonization type shit, but but I want to be able to share, you know, the work and the words more creatively and visibly. I feel like film is such a powerful medium, and I feel so foreign to it. So that's why I'm here.
That makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I think we'll get started. So basically, maybe we'll share, should we share the agenda first? Yeah, we're gonna do a screen share. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Rahi Hassan. I use they, them pronouns. And welcome to Impact Producing Masterclass. So yeah, we're gonna first go ahead and do some introductions, and then I'll tell you a little bit about like what is impact producing, right? Like what I feel like in the recent, if you are in the documentary filmmaking world, it's been kind of like I feel like it's been like a very hot like term, and everyone's been talking about it. So I can like share a little bit about like what's that's about like in the documentary field. And then Seth will go more into what does it look like to develop an impact campaign. And then we'll share some case studies. So like there are different, you know, documentaries that have done like quote unquote, like, you know, successful impact campaigns, meaning when we talk about like more about developing impact campaign, we'll talk about like how you track a campaign. And so I think a lot of the case studies will kind of show you, well, we're actually sharing one case study, which is the film that Seth was the impact producer for. But we will be sharing the resources that we kind of like share with you in the presentation with you after the class. We'll email them to you. And a lot of those resources have lot more case studies. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how can you apply the skills of an impact producer in your life, in your career, and such. And I can go first for introduction. We have these questions: name, pronoun, city. What kind of work do you do? And what would you like to get out of this session? So anyways, I shared my name already. My name is Rahi Hassan. I use they, them pronouns. I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. I'm originally from Bangladesh. I moved to New York City when I was 14 and lived there for 14 years. Then moved to the South in Durham, North Carolina 5 years ago. And what else do we have here? Oh, what kind of work do I do? I work at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University. I coordinate the continuing education program in documentary arts. That's my full-time job. And then I am with the funding and development subcommittee with the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. I'm also working on developing like a podcast and many different film projects that have been developing for a while. Yeah, made you interested in participating? Yeah, so that's more like a question for you all. But I will share, full disclosure, this is my first time doing a presentation on impact producing. So as you all know, Seth and I were we actually met through an impact producer fellowship by Firelight Media. And I think Firelight Media, hi! Firelight Media is, oh, what's her name? She's so cute.
Sorry, y'all, I'm at my cousin's house and there's like 20 kids here. That's like, I don't even know her. I don't know her at all. Yeah.
Did you say her name? Anyway, sorry, I got distracted. I love kids. So like I was saying, we met at the Firelight Fellowship. And, you know, to be honest, I don't know of any other fellowships out there that is like an impact producer fellowship. And we had a great experience. I learned a lot. And this, today's experience or prepping for this is making me really realize that, you know, learning something and knowing something and presenting it or like sharing it or leading, like teaching it is very different. Let's see. And, you know, like Seth will be sharing the film that they impact produced. I personally have not like professionally was like an impact producer for a documentary film, but I have implemented the skills I learned as an impact producer in various different projects I've worked on. The Center for Documentary Studies is a nonprofit and very much functions like a nonprofit. And so I had brought you know, like impact work to the Center for Documentary Studies as a whole, also the program that I coordinate, and then also like my personal documentary projects. I haven't led a full campaign in a documentary project, but I've started designing the strategic plan and a campaign for my own film. And yeah, so let's go around and introduce ourselves. Maybe we can do popcorn. So I'll call on someone's name, introduce yourself, and then just pass it to someone else and call out someone else's name. So how about Mario?
Well, thank you. Well, first off, I'm really grateful for all of you being here and for Rocky taking lead on this set and everyone else that's in here. My name is Mario Torres Torres. I am a producer, filmmaker, content creator based in LA, currently in Whittier. Let me see. The kind of work that I do as an activist, that's really what my work has been about, you know, bringing stories of underserved, underprivileged communities. And I do a lot of commercial and narrative work. And so what I really hope to get out of this, one of my ultimate goals in the industry is to go into the distribution side of things. And so I feel like this is very, it's the perfect opportunity to really learn and understand how we can, as a community, really bring a story that normally wouldn't be shared to such a wide audience and really create the space for that. And so, let me see, in particular, participating. Yeah, that's pretty much me. And so I will popcorn over to Lynette.
I was hoping you wouldn't call me, and you did, because I had to run to another room. Sorry, but I'll start sharing. Hi. Hi, sorry. It's just bad timing. I'm like walking around the house. Lynette, go by she and her. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana, and my full-time job is I work at an admissions office at a community college here locally. I'm their adult learner recruiter. But when I'm not working, I'm trying to write and write and write. And sometimes I get gigs to perform what I write. And what would I like to get out of the session? I basically everything that I do outside of work, I try to have it be related to the arts and in all these different ways. So this is another way I hope to learn more about the industry and make inroads into that since my background's been education for a really, really long time. I'm still young, but I mean relatively long time. So yeah, I'm excited to learn. I've known Seth for a long time, and so I'm excited and very grateful for this offering because, you know, I'm sure it took a lot of work for y'all to gain all this knowledge and experience and information. So it's super generous of y'all to share it with us. Yeah, thank you. Popcorn, Dorian? Is that the right way to?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Well, hello. My name is Dorian Gomez. I go by she, her pronouns. And I am based in Durham, North Carolina, same as Rahi. I'm just super grateful to be here. I think that I've always heard of the term impact producing, but I think that I really want to learn more about it. And I feel like I'm constantly just wanting to just like learn more about the different jobs in the industry, just because I don't know, it's just super interesting to me, and maybe like I'll go into it at some point. I don't really know, but the kind of work that I do is I am I do a lot of freelance work, but I am also a filmmaker. Right now, I do my current job is also at the Center for Documentary Studies with the continuing education program. But my main two projects right now is with the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective with the Community and Organizing Subcommittee, as well as right now I have this project with a podcast called Nuestro South, which really elevates a lot of the history in Mexican immigrants in the South, mainly during the Jim Crow era, and we try to connect it with how different was from that time onto like what it is now. And we're really trying to elevate these stories so that so that a lot of our younger generations can really have I feel like as not only as an immigrant but also like as a Mexican immigrant, there tends to be like um, uh, this feeling of like never really fitting in a box. So we do this project in hopes to just kind of give a lot of the younger generations a sense of belonging in just in a place where you're neither from here or from there. So, but yeah, thank you so much for putting this together. This is super awesome, and like I'm super excited to be here. I'll popcorn to Will.
Hi, everybody. My name is Will. I'm in Los Angeles or Tongva land, and I'm at my dad's house right now. So they're cooking. It might be a little loud. Sorry about that. But I I identify as he, him. I'm Peruvian, and I'm part of the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective too. Um, I'm a filmmaker. I mainly focus on cinematography, but I also have like this. I've always had this need to tell stories, so I've studied screenwriting, and currently I'm developing a screenplay, and I'm really excited about it. I've been working on it a lot lately through like this fellowship with it has like it has like wormholes and a Mayan codex and just cool, like it's a concept that gets me really excited, and I want to infuse it with as much consciousness as I can and just intentionality. And I also recently finished a short documentary with garment workers that are part of the Garment Workers Center in LA. And we're going to be screening that virtually, doing a virtual premiere in about a month. And that's why I'm here. Mainly, I want to learn about impact producing. I've already learned a lot from Set about it, and I'm really grateful for that. I mainly focused on cinematography, but like I said, I have this need for directing and telling stories. So I think it's always going to be something that I do kind of like as an additional thing, you know. And then I also do photography and videography and those kind of things. So yeah, and I've been Seth has been sharing knowledge with me about his process with coverage, the short film that he did, and so we're kind of like following that in a way. And I'm here to learn. Yeah, thanks a lot. And popcorn. Um, I'm Reed.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. I super appreciate it. And congrats, Will, for your fellowship. So, yeah. So for me, I am also based in LA, specifically the San Fernando Valley, like I mentioned earlier. I go by she, her, they, them. I honestly don't care as long as you acknowledge me when you talk to me. I am currently doing some a post on a new short film I just made like in the last few months, and so that's kind of like my bigger project going on now. I'm also writing a feature film with my partner that's almost done with the first draft, so we're like really hoping that we can kind of focus and get that done. And right now I'm technically like unemployed. I lost my job through COVID-19, but I am hopefully kind of taking on like little freelance gigs here and there, like some of y'all have mentioned too. And for me, specifically what I want to be doing in filmmaking is I want to be a director and screenwriter, like on a full-time basis. And that's kind of what I've focused on in the last like year and a half for sure. And so I'm really proud of myself for where I've come so far. but I do want to be getting like fellowships, and I do want to be getting more mentorships and more leadership kind of opportunities in that field. And besides like being in the undocumented makers collective, I was part of this program called Outset, which is like a fellowship from Outfest, but I just left it because it's just a white space and they're full of shit. So that was one fellowship I did have. I just left it, so transitioning into something new. But yeah, so I'm kind of like in between transitions right now, trying to figure out like what I want to be doing and like how to kind of use this time right now that I have, you know, to build more things within myself and how to work on my healing, mental health, and then how to also like be true to my work. It's like Will, you said, like, you know, being intentional with your projects and stuff. So that's what I'm kind of trying to work on right now as well. And then the thing that made me really interested in just jumping on this call was I've heard Seth as well mention impact producing for like the last year or two. And so it's always been something that like I've always kind of been interested in, because it seems like I have experience in organizing and activism as well, but you know, I've never really infused it with filmmaking or kind of seeing it through that lens. And so I'm just kind of here to see what it's about today. And yeah, and I will popcorn to Hector.
Hi, everyone. Can folks hear me? Oh, yes. Hola, Héctor Plasencia, de Them We Us. Let's see, I am a movement consultant, and I see impact producing as a part of social justice work. Ever since we started creating with folks, we wanted to be able to make films. So I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of the folks, well, in Southern California, that are part of the Undocu Filmmakers Collective. When we were at the Labor Center, we worked with Marcos Nieves to do a film on Vaporu. We've worked with Will on a film, what was it? Remember what's it called? Undocumented and Thrive poem that we did at the park. And then with Seth, of course, with the film coverage, and currently working with Paulo around a film on transmasculine health and mental health, short doc that will come out, I believe, in June. So I see impact filmmaking as a part of our social justice work. I'm here to learn from you all, and I'm always looking for creative ways to be able to elevate social justice and have it be irresistible. So that everyone's saying now, being irresistible. So I think about, what does irresistible mean? Does that mean making it popular, making it catchy, making it, and that's all a part of entertainment. And so being able to kind of understand that better with media and social justice, and again, here to learn from you all. Gracias.
Would you like the popcorn, Hector?
Yes, I just realized. Gracias. I'll popcorn to number 562-391-8002.
Oh, shoot. I wasn't ready. Okay. That is me. Claudia Ramirez, she, her pronouns. I have been I was, originally started off as a community organizer, been very interested in filmmaking, particularly like documentaries. I worked on coverage for set, and I've worked on other films as well. And I feel like I've kind of like informally or been like already an impact producer, but was not really aware that this is what it was called. So yeah, like everyone mentioned, Ted has been very instrumental, right, in like just like being, like sharing all his knowledge with me, and I want to continue just kind of learning more about this process and how to become better, just like better impact producer. It's something that I'm also interested in. So yeah, in a nutshell, Sorry, I'm kind of like walking between places. I don't know if you heard me, but let me popcorn to let me see, who am I missing? I can't see the screen. Popcorn to anyone else. Sorry, I don't know who's on the call right now.
I think Sultry hasn't gone yet.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. I'm Sultry. I go by they, them, Sha, and all. Spoken with love. I am currently in Tongva in LA. I just moved here in September from Chicago. And currently, my day job is service. I shifted from doing like legal work, like legal secretary, paralegal work around immigrant visas and children and family justice and small business. But my chosen work is arts. It's music, poetry. I also do healing arts work around herbs, and I'm also like immersing myself in honoring the feminine divine around our menstrual moon cycles, and just healing holistically. And I'm reclaiming practices from my ancestry that have been lost. And so in regards to impact producing, I'm very new to this term. I feel like a lot of it's, just the industry of capturing our daily lives is not really as common in the Midwest. And where I'm coming from, the Marshall Islands, I feel like this is something that I would like to bring to my communities that never feel like we deserve or should have anything tangible or long lasting because of like also our ancestral belief of like, just wanting to give it up to nature. But I feel like those are the stories, especially around climate change, that we need to preserve and I want to share. I do a lot of workshops and performances, but it's so live that it's so taxing. And I feel like creating something in a visual form that can be transferred and held in a space can really echo, not just for myself, but the people that I co-create with. So I just want to be able to create that container to have a more lasting impact. And Seth, I think did you go, Seth?
Yeah, Seth, you didn't go.
Let me jump in real quick. Hi, everyone. Set Hernandez Ronquillo, they, them, also use other gender pronouns. I am also with the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. I work as an impact producer, also direct and produce shorts. Currently also doing some screenwriting. I like to cry and laugh with my homies in the collective. Just sharing space also is my specialty, and being a little chismoso out here. I also am here to just excited to share space, and co-lead with Rahi in terms of sharing what we know about impact producing. And I also just want to acknowledge that a lot of the work that I learned as a storyteller, as an undocumented person, it really stems from the work that Tam Tran, I think it was Sultry who mentioned Tam Tran earlier. In the chat box, I shared an article that Tam Tran and Cynthia Felix, yesterday was actually the 10-year anniversary of their passing away, and really invite folks to learn about Tam Tran. There's a book written about her and Cynthia Felix called Undocumented and Unafraid, Tam Tran, Cynthia Felix, and the Immigrant Youth Movement. Just really important for us to know our heritage as undocumented storytellers. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you everyone else for sharing your stories. Wow, what a powerful group of people. I'm just like, damn. Also, I felt like it was kind of I don't know what's the word, not redundant, but like I was like, yeah, does Seth really needs an introduction? Like every single person here knows Seth very well, and the common thread of the people that are present here is Seth. Seth, yeah, thank you, Seth, also for inviting me in co-leading this with you. And I'm constantly learning things from you. Okay, so let's move on to, I know what time is it? It's 5:33. We're half an hour into our 2-hour class. So so the question about, oh yeah, let's read this quote. Seth, do you want to read it? Let's see.
Yes, we slipped in some quotes here and there, and it's interesting that Hector mentioned irresistibility, and this quote comes from the Black visionary, storyteller, organizer, cultural strategist, cultural worker Toni Cade Bambara, and I learned about her through Fresco Stees, who was the Minister of Culture at BYP 100, and also Charlene Carruthers. Toni Cade Bambara says, as a cultural worker who belongs to an oppressed people, my job is to make revolution irresistible. And this quote comes from an interview which dives in a little bit more about what that irresistibility looks like. So just using this as a frame for our conversation. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So from the introductions, it sounds like folks are coming from all different mediums and different, work background, and also different understanding of, impact producing. It seems like some folks are really, know a lot about it, or at least just from organizing or knowing set, know a lot about impact producing. And some folks would really like to get a sense of what this is all about. So hopefully, the way we have it designed, it kind of touches on all the aspects that kind of covers things people are trying to get out of this class. But also, like, feel free to write questions or whatever on the chat box. So I guess, yeah, we'll go into what is impact producing. So I kind of just pulled up some definitions from just like dictionary.com and stuff about like what the word impact means. So Merriam-Webster says the force of impression of one thing or another, a significant or major effect. So in general, the way we understand impact is it's like, leaving an effect with something, right? Or having an effect on a situation or a person. So translating that into film, in a way, I guess it's kind of like, if you just translate that, it's like, how does a film make an effect or have an effect on, the audience, right? If you think about like in the filmmaking process, you go through different stages, and the very last stage is distributing the film, right? Once you have made your film, you're trying to get people to come to the theaters or whatever different mediums you're distributing the film, whether it's theater, festivals, web platforms, DVD or whatever. You're trying to get people to watch the film. So impact, I would say, is you want people to do something after watching the film, right? And so there is a word before impact became like a term. A similar kind of work that has been done was called outreach or audience engagement. How do you engage the audience with the film? But the difference between that audience engagement or outreach and impact is that outreach is getting to as many people as possible, getting people to the theater, right? But impact is getting just to the right people. And like I said, getting people to do something after they watch the film. So there is a kind of a formal definition that was put together by Documentary Producers Alliance. So I'll kind of just read through the definition real quick. So impact producer. The impact producer is responsible for maximizing a film's potential for social change. Responsibilities may vary based on the film's content and defined distribution goals, but often include strategy development, issue mapping, brain trust facilitation, organizational partnership development and management, digital content production and engagement, and evaluation and impact measurement. An impact producer may also coordinate and/or oversee a film's semi-theatrical screening campaign and release. The impact producer may also play a role in story development and fundraising, beginning as early as pre-production. So that was a lot, and a lot of lot of different words in there, right? Um, I'll before we dive deep into like kind of like so you hear the word impact producing, impact producer, and then also the term impact campaign, right? So the impact producer leads a campaign, just like you know, in movements or in community organizing, like, or in politics, it would lead a political campaign, right? I'll share a little bit about the timeline. So, you know, generally, the way people think of impact in filmmaking is that, you know, you have your research phase, you pre-produce the film, then you go into production, and somewhere in the middle of, or generally people think you would actually even edit your film, and then you think about impact, right? Um, like it says here in the last line, that impact could start beginning at as early as pre-production. So for me, as I am even drafting my log line and thinking about my proposal for my film, I think about it from the very beginning as a very impact-centered project, right? So I asked that question, what do I want, what impact do I want my film to make, right? So as I'm writing my script writing is very impact-centered. And if I have, like, you know, development funding, I can see you could like bring in an impact producer as you are pre-producing in your research project, you know, because if you don't have impact producing background, they can kind of help you like think through the process of pre-production in an impact-centered way. And so, yeah, so what we're going to go into next is the whole strategy of like, how do you design an impact campaign, and how do you develop the different stages that it says, like, you know, strategy development, issue mapping, brain trust, and things like that. Before we go into that, does anyone have any questions so far in terms of just about the definition? Okay. Sad, did you want to add anything to kind of the definition before you go into the next slide?
Yeah, Ryan, would you like to share this set of slides about the skill sets? Or would you
Sure.
like me to do it? Yeah, please go ahead.
So I'll just read through it. So impact producing skill sets. Strategic leadership, defining the campaign goals, messages, and change tactics, policy, corporate practices, etc. Identifying the target decision makers, influencers, audiences, and barriers. Overall management of the campaign and all its moving parts. Day-to-day management and staffing, financial management. Okay, and then stakeholder outreach. I'll just read through it, Set. Is that okay? Okay, and like feel free to add anything to, like, if you want to explain any part of it. Stakeholder outreach, advisory board development and engagement, brain trust and strategy hacks, partnership agreements, day-to-day stakeholder communications, funder engagement, grant writing and reporting, budgeting, partnership management.
Yeah, thank you, Rahi. So as Rahi shared the description of what an impact producer is, this is the source for this, and this is one of the first articles that was ever written about impact producing and what it is. Impact producing, like Rahi said, is a fairly young field in the film space. Often it's been associated with documentary, but more recently narrative films. One of the more recent narrative films actually that had an impact campaign that's intentional was Just Mercy, starring Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. I don't know if folks have seen that movie. And more recently also using impact producing beyond just documentary with books, with podcasts, anything that has potential for social impact. And in this article, they pretty much outlined what the threads are that they saw is the skill sets of an impact producer. So in many ways, impact producing is kind of not the same as field production. When you're like shooting a film, it's almost like a synergy or a hybrid of thinking about distribution, thinking about PR and communications, thinking about also organizing and advocacy, but with the lens of film story in that. So stakeholder outreach, funder engagement, as well as strategic leadership, right? So like Rahi said, it's pretty much like running an organization. Like Rahi said, it's really like leading a campaign, and at the helm of it as an impact producer, you're the one that's kind of like calling the shots. But even within the impact producing field, there's different subsets. There's an impact coordinator, there's an impact strategist, there's an impact advisor, there's an impact consultant, so it kind of branches out to these different sections. But all that to say that, impact producing is a skill that I think we all in this call, I know that all of us, because I know you all of us have the skills to be an impact producer. What was helpful for me to be in the fellowship with Rahi is that it made me understand that I have these skills that I can curate for a whole different job that I've never even thought of for myself, right? So having said that, I'm going to pivot now towards the development of an impact campaign. And most of this, what I'll be sharing comes from impact campaigns that I've led, and also that I've seen. So sharing a little bit of what I know through the lens of that. But before I kind of dive into the development itself, I thought it would be important to just kind of ground us in a particular ideological framework as to why impact producing is a field that is important for us to really tap into. So the way that I personally orient my work is through the lens of cultural strategy. This is an article that Rahi and I also read through our impact producing lab. And really, cultural strategy is a field of practice that centers the work of artists, storytellers, media makers, and cultural influencers as agents of social change. I'm sure that for those of us that are artists in the space, which is practically all of us, how many times have nonprofits reached out to us asking, hey, we have this event, can you perform or can you make art for free? You'll get exposure, and that's pretty much the extent of what you'll get, right? And also, kind of like bringing on the artist perspective at the last minute. With the framing of cultural strategy, artists are not an afterthought, but rather co-collaborators and co-thinkers in the development of the work that we're trying to do in the movement. And just to kind of, this ideology isn't new, right? So just kind of grounding a different framework through the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. In there, she talks about cultural strategy almost peripherally through the lens of the civil rights movement. She says, all of the needed reforms have less to do with failed policies than a deeply flawed public consensus, one that is indifferent at best to the experience of poor people of color. As Martin Luther King Jr. explained back in 1965 when describing why it was far more important to engage in mass mobilizations than to file lawsuits, he said, we're trying to win the right to vote, and we have to focus the attention of the world on that. We can't do that making legal cases. We have to make the case in the court of public opinion. In his view, it was flawed public consensus, not merely flawed policy, that was at the root of racial oppression. So that idea of a public consensus is kind of where the realm of cultural strategy becomes that important. And, for those of us that have been doing organizing work, you might be able to relate to this. But for me, the three key elements of movement work that I've kind of engaged in, having been organizing since 2010, low-key Lynette was the second undocumented person that I've met in my entire life, So Lynette literally and I go way back, so super excited to be in the space with her. So in the organizing work that we do, the at least for me as a filmmaker also, policy advocacy, community organizing, as well as cultural expression are kind of like the three elements that we're kind of like navigating, right? There's folks that are working on Sacramento, in DC, you know, lobbying or doing legislative visits. There are folks that are organizing the protests, you know, and at the same time, there are folks that are making the art to really elevate, you know, the issues that we're talking about. So having used those elements, the theory of change, for those who are not familiar, is pretty much this concept of what is your model that you look to, and what is that model that shows you how change in the world comes about, right? So what is the model that you use to bring about the change that you want to see in the world, right? So for me, this theory of change uses the three elements that I just shared, which is really stories and our narratives as individuals, as a community, can be brought together in a strategic way towards a bigger cultural strategy, right? Because we can tell our stories independently, you know, but we can make more impact if we bring about the threads that pull together our stories in a way that is strategic and that can tap into the cultural sphere. And when we tell our stories in a strategic way, by pulling together the threads that bring together our stories, we can then use it to really agitate people when people feel things, you know, they are more ready to do something, right? To agitate people, to mobilize them towards community organizing, because we know that through community organizing, that's how we get to the policy change, right? That's how we make change happen, you know, whether it's in the policy level, in the electoral level, in the cultural level, where we make people think differently about the world, where we make people think differently about how they see themselves, you know, how we make people think differently about what's possible and what we can fight for, right? And really through that, that's how we get towards social transformation. So that's kind of like the theory of change that I kind of use to operate in the work that I do as an impact producer. And pivoting from that, you know, now that we have this model or theory of change, you know, what does that look like in operation? So the model of work that I will dive into kind of like talks more about how to operationalize that, right? So for those of us that have been working in nonprofit spaces, like all of us, and in advocacy and organizing spaces, you know, often we have a campaign, right? Whether it's for like DACA, you know, in 2012, Health for All right now, including undocumented people in relief around the pandemic, right? So that's a campaign. And often in the organizing space, the campaign usually serves as the bigger vessel through which content or film is created. So film, art, graphics, music, they're all created in the service of the impact campaign, so that there's a way to bolster the campaign by amplifying it through cultural expression, right? And then in the film world, it's pretty much the flip side of that. You know, again, all of us in here some way, somehow, you know, must have had experience, a producer approaching us, or even a researcher, you know, approaching us, you know, a journalist, you know, approaching us, hey, you know, I'm doing something about undocumented people, you know, and my film is going to change the world, right? Because often, especially in social impact films, a lot of filmmakers, you know, come into an issue thinking that my film is gonna get released and it's gonna change the world, right? Without really recognizing that before they even thought about this film, this white filmmaker thought about this film, there have been organizers doing this work for at least a decade before they came in about with their saviorism, right? So the impact producer pretty much reframes how that works, right? So with a film that's social impact oriented, what happens often is the film serves as a bigger vehicle, and then the impact producer creates a campaign for that film where the film can be used as a tool by the organizer so that it's in service of the work that they're doing and not just to prop up the career of a filmmaker, right? So that's really the impact producer's role, serving as a bridge between the film and the community and finding a way for that film to be used as a tool for organizing work. And there's also this third model currently in the project that I'm impact producing, a new film that I'm impact producing. The aspiration is to be more of a 50-50%, where really cultural strategy is at the heart, where the artists and the organizations and organizers that are doing the work are in strategic synergy with each other in developing how to amplify the campaign. In this case, for us, it would be the Freedom All campaign. So that's kind of like the model of work. That's the groundwork, in terms of how cultural strategy operates. Oops, sorry, someone's trying to join. Oops, Mario is trying to join. Sorry, Mario. Okay, great. All right. Any questions about the theory of change and model of work before I segue into the development of a campaign?
There was a question about what is meant by brain trust.
Yes, so I'm gonna dive into that in the next section. Thank you, Sultry. Any other questions about the theory of change and model of work? Yes, Emrit, please.
I have one.
And sorry, Emrit, sorry to interrupt you. I was gonna say I don't see folks, so please just say your question and yeah, jump in.
Oh, okay. Oh, would you prefer us writing them in the chat or just saying we have a question after you're done?
Do folks see the chat box if I have it open like this in my screen share? You don't see it? Do you see it? Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Yes, chat box then makes sense. Okay, but please go ahead, Emrit. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So for I'm assuming for different films, is it that different models work, or is it like, is there one that's better than all the other ones?
Yes. So actually I'm going to dive into that in the next section about the development of Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Well, maybe because a lot of the questions are about the next section, let me dive into it actually. Thank you, Sultry and Emrit. So when you're developing an impact campaign, really an impact campaign is a campaign, right? It's almost like a political campaign. It's just that instead of going to DC, instead of going to organize a lobby day, a legislative action day, what you're organizing around is a screening, is a film, and instead of using protests as a tool, you're using clips. You're using social media. It's almost like these intersections of digital organizing, media advocacy, community organizing, advocacy, policy advocacy, and all these things at once, right? So in developing an impact campaign, these are pretty much the three key pillars of what makes an impact campaign. You're gonna look into the landscape of the issue that you're talking about, and also you're gonna be cultivating partnerships with the organizations and the players that are part of this issue. I see that Dylan is also joining us. There are folks that are joining us right now. So for folks that are joining us just right now, we're diving into the development of an impact campaign. We just finished talking about what is an impact producer and the theory of change. So really, so what that looks like is, for example, if you're doing a film about climate justice and an impact campaign about climate justice, who are the key players in climate justice advocacy? What are the key movement calls to action, the key demands that the movement is doing, and how can the film be leveraged as a tool for that purpose in supporting that campaign? The second key area in developing an impact campaign is, now that you have researched the landscape of the issue and you've developed partnerships with the organizations and the key players, you're going to develop a strategy based on those learnings. And then the last part is the implementation and also using the distribution of a film as part of your strategy in terms of engagement, whether through social media, community screenings, PR, news visibility, and things like that. So diving more into that, when it comes to issue landscape research and partner cultivation, there's really three key elements, and we're going to talk about the brain trust. This is one of the questions that was asked, right? So first, you're going to assess. You're going to do an assessment, right? You're going to identify the needs in the issue area that the film is about. What are the ongoing campaigns? Like I said, what are the goals of the organization? And then at the same time, you're also going to research the partners, or you're going to create relationships with partners who are the key players, the key organizations, the influencers, in the issue area that the film is about. And who will you be recruiting as intentional partners? Because also there's probably 100 organizations. For example, in immigrant rights work, There's so many immigrant rights organizations throughout the country, even within a state, right? So how are you going to curate which organizations you're going to partner with? Some organizations are problematic as fuck, so how are you going to call that out? Not call that out, but how are you going to pivot when those, but at the same time, they're very powerful. Maybe they're very well resourced, right? So how are you going to curate which partners you're going to work with, so that the point of view that your film has, or that your director's film has, doesn't get watered down because of a particular organization's point of view, right? And then lastly, the brain trust. So brain trust is pretty much like this, just a fancy word often used in the film world that describes a strategy meeting. It's literally just a strategy meeting, where partners come together to discuss how the film can be used in the work that they're doing, right? So, so think of like a retreat, pretty much, where you're bringing together your different community organizations, your members, and you're assessing what is your goal for the next year. So for example, for the collective, for the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective, almost every structure meeting that we have to identify the goals of our organization, that is a brain trust. For those of us that have done student organizing and, immigrant rights organizing in the past, a lot of our strategy meetings, those are brain trusts. For some reason, though, film people wanted to, make something new. I don't know what's going on with them, but they're out here. Okay. So the next part, like I mentioned, is the development of the strategy. Now that you have assessed the landscape and researched the issue and who the partners are, you're going to use all of what you know to develop a strategy. And the way to develop that strategy really is by learning first why the filmmaker made the film, or why the artist is making the art, right? Because that piece is the center, not the center, but the issue and the piece are two of the key players in the impact campaign. And the artist created the piece because they have a particular point of view that they want to insert into the world. Maybe for a film like that I worked on, like for example, for us with Coverage, our film about healthcare access for undocumented adults, we made the film because we want to center the voices of undocumented people as leaders, but also as undocumented people being in the realm of healthcare, and why it's important for folks in immigrant rights space to think about the different issues impacting undocumented folks, including access to healthcare, which impacts all of us, especially at this point, right? So there was a particular point of view that we're presenting through the film, and there's a goal why we made this film. So you got to talk first with your filmmaker why they made the film. And often in these conversations, sometimes this conversation happens in pre-production. Sometimes a filmmaker has a really problematic point of view. They want to see undocumented people cry and like get white people to empathize with us, So at that point, when you do those consultations, pre-production, that's where you can begin the pushback, and make the filmmaker think more differently. Sometimes also as an impact producer, you got to pick and choose which films you work on, because just because a film exists and has an impact campaign and budget, do you want to be associated with it also? Like, is that the friend that you don't want to be seen with? So maybe it's not even your friend, actually. It's just someone that you don't want to be seen with at all, So just be careful, of how you navigate, these pieces, right? And then on top of that, the other key item that you need to consider is the goals of the organizations in the movement. What are they working towards, and also what are the campaigns that they're doing, and how does this kind of work in tandem with the goals that the filmmaker has? Because sometimes there is a lot of intersection. Sometimes there's not as much. So that's where you kind of do the massaging and figuring out whether these are the right partners, or even if this is the right film for you to work on. And then from there, you develop the preliminary goals. And then once you do the brain trust, the strategy meeting, in the brain trust, you pretty much present your goals. I'm going to do a sample of what a brain trust look like. You're going to present your goals to the partners. And then after you hear their feedback, you're going to refine those goals. The last element is the engagement strategy and the implementation. So now that you have a strategy, how are you going to make it happen, right? So, usually this kind of happens in tandem with the distribution of the film, and as it goes about with the film festival route that it's going to be taking part in. If it isn't a theatrically distributed film, you're going to go about with a non-theatrical community screenings kind of a route, and how are you going to navigate that, right? So I think part of it also is learning how the distribution kind of stream works. Even I myself don't know as much about it because my focus has been mostly on non-theatrical. But how are you gonna make sure that as the film goes out into the world, into the theaters, the audience members also have a way to understand how they can support the campaign that you're doing? And some of the tools that you can use is like social media, traditional media, pretty much PR, right? Usually for a feature film that's well-resourced, they have a PR team, they have a publicist. How can you work in tandem with the publicist to make sure that it's not just the film, but also the issues that are being highlighted? If the protagonists are going through something really difficult and you have like resource sharing for them, how can you make sure to highlight those needs also, right? And then also community screenings, and then integrating the film into advocacy work. Maybe an organization is doing legislative visits with policymakers. How can you make sure that these policymakers who have power in the legislative field are able to watch the film? Maybe using 2-minute clips for them to watch, or something like that. And then at the end of it, once you start implementing, pretty much it's kind of like this idea of writing, rewriting, right? You're gonna be putting out your campaign into the world, and as you implement it, you're also gonna be constantly evaluating whether what you're doing is working or not. I'm gonna go into questions right after this. I just feel like they're all connected, so please bear with me a little bit more. So I think what's also important is to think about engagement in this realm of audience, right? Who is your audience? Because if you think about your project and your art, is that audience the people that you're thinking about? Often also there's this idea that I've met artists, for example, and filmmakers who's like, I want everyone to be reached by this film. And when we do communications work, what we realize is we have to understand how different messages impact different people differently, right? So we have to be able to not so much segment our audience, but to be able to really understand what we want our film to do and who are the people that are most likely to follow up with that goal, right? So what is our goal with the film, and who are the people that will help us get towards that goal, right? Because if I'm doing, a film, about healthcare access for undocumented people, maybe, I don't know, like Stephen Bannon probably is not in my audience. Breitbart people probably isn't my audience, but there are other people that I can work with towards that goal, right? So that's where the difference between outreach and impact is. Outreach is your film was viewed by 1 million people, but did 1 million people also do something about the issue that was highlighted in the film? That's where impact comes in, right? So if only 100,000 people did something, but you had 100,000 people that included, people that were working in DC to get a law passed, people that are working in the local community to make mutual aid happen, even though 900,000 people didn't do shit, 100,000 people did like the most incredible thing. Sorry, this is being recorded. I should stop cussing. I'm sorry. But like being able to really understand that the impact of your film isn't necessarily like 1 billion people watching your film, right? And I think for me, that impact piece probably is more important to a certain extent than like, millions of people watching your film. And then this is kind of like what I was talking about in terms of distribution and impact. This left side, this is from the Impact Producers Toolkit and Field Guide. And Rahi and I will be sharing a Google folder that has all these resources that you all can keep. This is one of the items that you're gonna find there. So on the left, you're gonna see this is what constitutes an impact campaign, right? There's the like community screenings, there's the development of a campaign, there's legislative visits, lobbyings, going through the educational pipeline, getting schools to watch the film, right? And then this is the more traditional distribution, the advertisements, going to the theaters, having events that are non-theatrical with Academy members, getting your film nominated for the Academy Award because it's also publicity, right? So that's pretty much what the two different fields are that are pretty parallel. But with an impact distribution, you kind of want a synergy of both, where the distribution of the film helps to elevate the impact campaign so that you can have presence online and beyond, and also where you have constant press for the film and the issues that you're tackling, as well as screenings of the film in the community. So that's impact development. That's what impact producing is. I'm gonna segue a little bit now into a sample impact campaign, talking about the impact campaign I did for the film that I worked on with Claudia as assistant editor, with Hector as our amazing protagonist. Just quick plug, in case you haven't seen it, you can watch it on May 25th and see Hector's amazing, powerful organizing work. And then I'm also gonna share a little bit about the other impact campaign that I did for a film called Call Her Ganda in 2018. I'm sharing more about coverage though, because for that one, I did everything and I feel like it's easier to like talk about it. But before I do that, any questions?
Should I just say it?
Yeah,
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering for the 3 different models that you shared for the theory of change, right?
Yes.
Is that, did somebody come up with that? Is that like an industry agreed upon theory? Is it something you would just like to abide by? I'm just curious as to like whether it's like one of many like the models you presented, or it's just like best practices type of thing. And then the details that you shared, under which model do you feel they fit?
Got it. Thank you, Lynette. Actually, and Amrit also had a similar question earlier, right? Amrit, was your question similar to that? And was there a different element?
Mine was actually about the different models of impact producing in filmmaking. It was more of like which of the 3 models you shared is like most effective, I guess, or is it like it depends on per project? So mine was like the slide before the one that Lynette is talking about.
Amazing. Thank you all. Yes. So just to kind of share, this is the way I visualize it, but like I said, I'm like I didn't invent it, it's just me learnings, and I put in all my learnings together. Another person actually has something similar is Fabiana Rodriguez. Fabiana talks about the cross between cultural work, the cultural realm, the economy, and the political realm. So that's kind of like how Fabiana talks about it. And also this kind of comes from this article that was alluded to earlier, the conversation about cultural strategy. Sorry? Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so to Lynette's point, the way I visualize it is something that I just kind of did based on the learnings that I had from these different articles as sources, and also based on my experience working in both filmmaking and community organizing work. But like I said, it's like maybe like a different side of the same cube. And then to the question about the model of work, kind of like to Amrit's point, for me, I think it depends on the project and who the filmmakers are and who the partners are. For some filmmakers, I've heard, for example, they don't like hearing their films used as a tool, because they're artists, right? Which is a valid perspective, but that makes it difficult, if they don't want their film to be used as a tool. And for them, the model here with the film as the vehicle, as the vessel, probably is the model that would work best for them. for coverage, for example, this is the model that we did because the Health for All campaign, Hector has been in the Health for All campaign since 2013 or 2012 or 2010. I don't even know. I stopped counting, you know, and we developed the film to be able to really bolster that campaign, right? So this is the model that we did. For this new project that I'm working on, the artists are really intentional in making sure that the community organizations are part of the presenting of the art piece and the art spectacle itself, right? So different projects are gonna call on different models. I don't know whether one works better than the other. I know that none of them is perfect. And I think working towards what is best with the campaign and towards the goals that you need might be one way to think about it. Do folks have any other questions about this before I dive into the sample work? Lynette, you had a second question. Did I answer your second question?
Oh, sorry, I thought you could see me. Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other questions before I dive into the samples?
Hey, Seth. Yes, I actually had a question. Is there any specific way that you've measured the impact that the film has had?
Yes, so I'm gonna dive into that actually in the sample.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so it sounds like that's a great segue actually, Mario. Thank you for asking that question. So now, what did I say I'm gonna talk about in this next section? I am gonna talk about the strategy materials that we developed for coverage, the presentation that we had for the brain trusts, and then our outreach and screenings toolkits, as well as the feedback survey and evaluation. So to your point, Mario, that's the last element that I will be sharing in the sample. And then also for Kal Harganda, we developed a preliminary report after we did all these conversations and brain trust with partners. So that's also another way to evaluate the impact of the film. All right. Having said that, so in the Google folder that we will be sharing with you, the only thing that I asked is you can share the impact campaigns that I did with other people, but I just request for folks to not share it like publicly in social media and other areas, just because it has information about strategy that I think might not be best for opposing sides to like have access to. But everything else, please feel free to like use it. And this is the impact field guide. It's pretty much a Bible of how to develop an impact campaign that's developed through Doc Society. And then, yes. All right, so I'm gonna dive into coverage first. So the first document ever that we developed for coverage was this impact distribution strategy document. And here, because I am the director of the film, I thought about, after speaking to Hector, our protagonist, after speaking to my bosses at CIPC, the California Immigrant Policy Center, and after developing the film, these are the goals that I kind of drafted as to what we want the film to accomplish, right? We wanted the film to galvanize community members to join the Health for All campaign in California. We wanted to move policymakers, including the governor, to pass Health for All elders, which unfortunately did not pass in this year, but the fight continues. We want to build public support, particularly outside of California, on the importance of including undocumented people in the national conversation on Medicare for All. This draft was developed, or this strategy was developed around the fall last year when Bernie was talking about Medicare for All and single payer and things like that, universal health coverage. And when that conversation was first starting, I don't know if folks remember watching the debate where they were like, who among you are open to including undocumented people in healthcare insurance, right? And then a lot of the media coverage the next day is like, the Democrats are like pretty much, you know, like shooting themselves in the foot by advocating for healthcare for undocumented immigrants. So one of our goals is to bring this conversation around Health for All beyond just California, but to other states where there's undocumented immigrants who don't have access to healthcare. Our other aspirational goal is to raise funds for undocumented folks who need immediate medical assistance, maybe through an UndocuHealth fund, and then to amplify the Health for All campaign in the organizations involved, so that they can use screenings as a fundraising opportunity for them. So those are the key goals that we developed. And then from those goals, we developed a strategy for this, for how we want to do this, right? So we have a strategy for community screenings, going to partnering with different foundations, with different organizations in the Health for All field, to host screenings for their members, and then working with different partners. We also have like a digital outreach, campaign. How can we make maybe a petition, or working with digital organizers, or amplifying the film in social media. And then we have a televised broadcast also that we had, and currently partnering also with other PBS affiliates to broadcast the film in local public television. Also a press outreach, who do we want to reach out to cover the film. And then also along with that is the film festival release. With this, also each strategy has a particular purpose. With us, we wanted to raise the profile of the Health for All issue by incorporating the film into the festival circuit, where media makers, press distributors, and key influencers can be galvanized into action, and really tapping into another realm that's not just organizers and advocates, but really asking them to support us, in joining the Health for All fight. I see that Anya just joined us. Hi, Anya. We are currently diving into a sample impact campaign, but I'm so glad that you were able to join us, Anya. Thanks for coming along. Welcome to the space. And then, so that's the strategy that we had for the film overall. And once I developed that strategy, does this document have that also? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I forgot to share. So there's a third page actually to the document. So in that same document, we listed partners that we want to work with in terms of who we want to help elevate the film and to host community screenings with us and have intentional discussions around Health for All. So I listed them by different sectors, labor, domestic workers organizations, educational institutions, faith-based organizations, and others like that, and also develop a timeline. When are we going to release the film? How are we going to release the film? And things like that. And all of these materials will be shared with folks. And really, I think with the timeline, the key thing that I want to share is when you develop a timeline, don't rush yourself, because part of it also is understanding that the campaign is ever emerging and ever unfolding. Your film is just one tool. It should just be one tool, right? There should be many other tools that the movement is doing, not just your film. Because then it also leads to the saviorism mentality, where you think, my film is going to change everything, when, to put it bluntly, it's not. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change everything. It's going to change something, but not everything, right? So just being mindful to be gentle to yourself, and to be in constant conversation with folks, and how we can make sure that the film is helpful towards reaching the goal of your campaign. So now the brain trust. So after you've developed the strategy documents, you are then ready to develop your brain trust. A brain trust, like I said, is a strategy meeting. So you want to curate who's going to be in your brain trust. For example, with Call Her Ganda, the film was about a transnational case of, it's about the life of Jennifer Laude, a transgender Filipino woman in the Philippines who was murdered by a white U.S. Marine in the U.S. naval base in the Philippines. And it kind of highlights the issue of U.S. imperialism and militarism in the Philippines, which was a former colony of the U.S. in the same way that Puerto Rico is a colony right now of the U.S. And also the gender-based violence, transphobia, in how colonization is a part of that process. So with Call Her Ganda, for example, we had brain trust that we did in Manila, Philippines, simultaneously in New York, and also we had one here in LA. And then for coverage, we had a brain trust in LA, we had a brain trust in Sacramento, and then we had a brain trust for our national screening, where we invited different partners from all over the country. So with the brain trust, it's like this meeting. No, this meeting is not a brain trust because we're not strategizing about anything. But you pretty much give an agenda, right? So pretty much you're like hosting a strategy meeting. You're gonna share about what you want to talk about, the goals of the film. This is one of our initial brain trusts, so some of the topics might be off, but also the key chunk of it is after you present your goals, you're gonna invite folks into discussion about how they would like to work in your campaign, right? So listing the goals, right, and then showing them the strategy, and then the partners. So pretty much just a presentation version of the same document that I shared with you. And then you guide them into a discussion of how this can help them or how this can help the movement. And that discussion then becomes part of this survey. You also develop a feedback questionnaire. So for example, we did the brain trust before we were at Picture Lock, before we finalized editing the film, because we wanted to get their feedback, whether the way the film is told is helpful. Are we saying anything that's inaccurate, right? So I asked them, these are the title cards in the film. Do you have any suggestions about them? Do you have any suggestions about the film, that was not addressed in these questions? And then the other document that we share with partners is how they would like to engage in the campaign. When you invite folks into a brain trust, you're not just talking to them and giving them feedback. You also want to develop next steps so that there's an understanding of how you all can work in synergy, right? Would they like to host a community screening? Would they like to be a partner in your premiere? When you go to Sundance, not fuck Sundance. When you go to Black Star Film Festival, yes, Black Star Film Festival in Philadelphia. And then when you promote, your film, can they help with promoting your film? And other things like that. So really developing next steps, and also if they are interested in being part of your impact campaign. And the way to ask them if they want to be part of your impact campaign is by asking them which ranking your goals. This is one tool that I learned from Daniel Moretti, who was with Frameline before, and kind of adapted. So being able to ask them which of these goals do you want to be involved in if you do want to be part of our impact campaign. So these are the materials that you can share during your brain trust. And just because we're almost out of time, I want to give us 30 minutes for really discussion, and also for Rahi to close us out. To Maria's question about evaluation. So with coverage, for example, we developed a post-screening survey. And what we did for after the screenings that we had, the national screening that we had, for example, we asked attendees to respond to a survey about how they view healthcare for undocumented immigrants. Here, 1 is disagree, 5 is agree. So we asked them before the screening that we had and before the COVID-19 pandemic, healthcare for undocumented immigrants was an issue I advocated for or paid close attention to. The respondents, responded all across the map, right? We asked them the same question if healthcare was an issue that they will advocate for after the screening. And as you can see, there's 3 times as many people that responded in the 5 section, and in the 4 section even, twice as many. So, we know that because of the film and the screening event that we had, people are now going to pay more closer attention to this intersection of healthcare for undocumented immigrants, right? So there's also these other questions that we had, whether they will be using film as an advocacy tool, whether they're more likely to engage in activism and advocacy. But these are ways to ask people, and this is a 2-minute survey, so make sure that your survey doesn't have too many questions, because otherwise people are not going to respond. And then we ask them also, what kind of sectors of work do they do, and then what issue areas they work on. And then we ask them one qualitative question at the end. Do you have any additional comments about the film? And as you can see, folks had really robust responses to that. So that's a sample campaign. And just because we're at 3:30, I'm going to pivot back to Rahi. Do folks have any questions about the samples before I pivot back to Rahi?
If nobody else, because I know I already asked a question.
Please take up space, Mentor Leonard. I'm here for it. Thank you.
Okay, I always have a million questions. So is the survey the main and pretty much only way that you measure impact, or are there other tools that people use to measure impact?
Yes, so let me share my screen again. In the impact toolkit that we will be sharing with you after this, there's actually a whole section called measuring impact, chapter 6. So you have all these tools that you're going to see. You can use press coverage. You can use like how the media has changed the way to talk about the issue. You can use for example, with Call Her Ganda, an anecdote that a partner told us is that after they had a screening of the film in Austin, Texas, or in Dallas, Texas, a new chapter of an organization was formed there because of the screening. You know, so beyond just those metrics, there's also the more field building, cultural perspectives that you can use to measure impact.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to pivot back to Rahi.
Hey all. Wow, that was so great, Seth. Thank you. So if there are no other questions, we're going to talk a little bit about how can we, so, you know, you learn all these skills, right? So what are the ways do you apply it? Sorry, I'm just trying to do this one thing, like dragging this one thing. It's just taking forever. So yeah, like how do you apply it? And then like, obviously, like I was telling you before in the beginning of the presentation that, you know, I applied it in various ways in whatever I did pretty much, different projects I was part of, the organization I work for, but I didn't really get paid for like the impact work that I did, right? So I kind of implemented these skills into my own work, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I feel like, I mean, if I was really like, there were ways for all the work that I did, there were possibilities for me to actually be able to get paid for those work too. So that's why I feel like it's important to kind of know all the ways that you can actually get paid to do the impact work. So then whenever you're doing that work, you recognize it, and then you find a way to get paid for it. So let's see. Yeah, we'll go into this. So let me just, so like Seth mentioned one section of their presentation that, you know, there are different like roles in impact producing like field, right? The main two roles that kind of that's used in film or documentary is impact strategist and impact implementer. And the impact strategist is also knows, all these different titles can be slightly different, but generally, like if you divide it up by these two roles, like the person who designs or develops the campaign is a strategist or an advisor or a consultant or an impact campaign designer, impact developer, all these different terms, right? But it's kind of like the person who's doing the creative, the brain work of designing this whole campaign that you saw, like different stages of designing it. And the implementer is the person who kind of coordinates, takes all of these strategies, that whole design, and makes it happen. So I'm going to go a little bit deep into both of these. So as an impact strategist, you could kind of market yourself as an independent impact producer. for documentaries through personal networking, just if you are in the industry and you are kind of like confident as an impact strategist, then you kind of like, just like any other freelance hustling that we do, you can do it that way, right? You can also, let me see something in yeah, if you go to the next slide, Set. So Set mentioned the impact field guide that we'll share with you. In that, there was a section at the very end of that field guide, which is a website called impactguide.org. They actually have this is a screenshot from there where they're kind of like publicizing these different organizations: Queer Producers Collective, Brown Girls Doc Mafia, Fledgling Funds Provider, Firelight Media's Fellowship page, Mass Media Collective, POV's Engagement Strategy. So all of these groups have folks that are skilled in impact producing, right? So you could also, so like the impact producers listserv and the domestic impact producer listserv, like those you can kind of sign on to. And we're also gonna kind of like talk to, so Seth and I both are in the Global Impact Producers listserv, and which is a great resource. I think we had talked about, we're gonna see if any of you who attended this workshop are interested, can get on that listserv. Queer Producers Collective also has an open application process, but I think they kind of require you to have made a feature-length film. But these are kind of open lists and collectives that you can join, and those collectives have already done their side of the work to do all the networking and stuff. So if you are like, you can if you are part of these listservs, you have access to a lot of freelance gigs, impact jobs out there. They also have like publicly available like bios of all the people who are in these listservs. And it's not like open to everyone. There are different ways you can get on these listservs and collectives, but once you are there, you're kind of like marketing yourself through these and getting like different opportunities of being hired as an impact producer. Other option is there are impact production companies and agencies that exist out there. So you could like sort of work with a production company, impact production company, and like, work that way, and that you would get hired through that agency. And then you could just have your own, like website and own company, if you will. And I would like to share one example of that. This person named Annie Mercedes, who was, I actually don't have it there. So actually said, I was gonna share my screen, but do you mind just going to Looky Pictures?
You wanna share your screen,
website.
Rahi? You don't have.
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. So this person, Annie Mercedes, she was also a Firelight Fellow. And she kind of, after she finished the fellowship, she went on and like kind of really created a career out of impact producing on her own, that like she kind of developed the whole like strategy and how to like monetize all her skills. And then she kind of she was one of the guest speakers at one of our fellowship retreats, and actually not a retreat, and shared with us how she has done all of that. So I'm just gonna like show you her website. Let me see. So this is her website, and so this is kind of like, the kind of stories that they accept to like take on as a project to develop an impact produce for. And these are the services that she provides, right? So designing impact campaign strategies, building partnerships, engaging target audiences, manage impact initiatives and events, manage community screenings, one-on-one consultations. So she kind of broke down that strategist and implementer roles into kind of chunks of different work that needs to be done in strategizing, in implementing, right? So like designing the campaign strategies, like building partnerships is part of like, you know, like Seth was saying, the landscape research part of it, right? So, you know, I'm assuming that she kind of like could provide all of these services, but I think she probably charges just to do one of these services. So she will come on to as a team in a project and do all the work that needs to be done to build partnerships and maintain and manage those partnerships, and so on and so forth, right? I'm gonna stop sharing for a second, and then you can look through her her website to get more of a sense of like how those services work. And then, so these are like sort of the different ways of applying impact producing. I kind of like, some of it is already like that exist, that people are professionally kind of applying it, but also, you know, I kind of put together like different ways that I'm like, it's not all in one place, but I'm like seeing how people are using them in different ways. And then as impact manager or implementer, you can go back to the previous slide, actually. Yeah, this one. So if you go or look through the field guide, in the strategy part of it, or actually in the distribution part of it, they talk about 4 kinds of change that people are trying to make. Change minds, change behavior, build communities, change structure. And so I was looking at one of the examples, one of the case studies they had on their website, where like they kind of broke it down how these 4 kinds of change are, like how do you move forward with that. So then they talked about like who can drive that change, right? So affected community members, civic leaders, media and academics, law enforcement, government and business leaders. And then like how, so it's like in the distribution process, you're kind of thinking about like, what are the changes you want to make? Who are the people you need to reach, right? And how do you reach those people, right? So in the distribution, there is, you know, non-theatrical distribution, festival release, television broadcast, educational distribution, online streaming, and all that stuff. So I'm mentioning all of those because for each of those different types of impact campaign, like let's say if you want to do an educational impact campaign, right? In a film, people would hire you as an implementer, as an impact manager for educational campaign part of it. Someone could hire you just to implement the theatrical impact part of it, right? And within those impact campaigns, like some people have, you know, like gotten really creative with like even theatrical screening sometimes, where they would have like maybe some kind of performance before the screening starts, maybe some kind of like handouts people take, or like fill out a survey that on an iPad instantly or something like that. So to manage all of that. So yeah, to say all of that is that like there is lots of different jobs and opportunities and different roles that are available in the impact manager, implementer role. The other thing I had was, there are folks who are working like with impact skills in fellowship programs. So for instance, the person who was leading the fellowship program that Seth and I were on, she had a full-time position leading, being the director of the fellowship program, right? And the Firelight Fellowship Program was like the first in its kind, but I'm pretty sure there will be more fellowship programs built like that. So that's like another like job opportunity you can think about, like leading different impact, either fellowship or educational programs that exist out there. Speaking of education, like you could also like see a career and impact as an educator, right? For instance, how Seth and I are teaching this masterclass, you could offer like long form courses or workshops in like, in like film programs and bachelor's film programs, master's film programs, continuing ed programs. And I'm not saying that all of those things exist. I know that, but I can like that there is like potential of like creating a career in that as an impact educator. There's also different online professional platforms like, lynda.com, Skillshare, and I'm assuming that this field is going to grow bigger and bigger. And like we mentioned in the past, that these skills are not only utilized in film, they're also utilized in many different like organizations and projects and things like that. You could also, like Annie, I didn't actually like show you on the website. So she has, on her website, she has a webinar kind of like similar to this masterclass that is pre-recorded. So people would have to like kind of pay to watch that, right? So that's another way of like monetizing your skills. She also has like kind of customized educational material on impact campaign, like similar to how Seth has designed this presentation based on like their like all the different things they learned from different different places. So Annie has created like also a very similar type of like thorough educational material that you I think hers is available for free, but like if you wanted to monetize something like that for like nonprofit organizations or something like that that are already allocating fund for bringing impact to their organizations. And then, yeah, so another like thing, it's just, I kind of thought about that. It's like, as I was looking through this impactfieldguide.org, there was another website called DocImpactHighfive.org, which is sort of like celebrating impact campaigns, like highlighting the impact campaigns that were really successful, and they're sort of I don't know what their process for picking these impact campaigns are, but if you go to that website, you see like really thorough case study of these like highly successful impact campaigns. And just looking at those websites, when you go in the bottom of them, you see collaborators. And one of the people who, a lot of the people who collaborated in the Impact Field Guide website, I don't know if they were compensated, but I would also think like there would be more resources like that that will be created where people could get paid to be collaborators in creating those resources. And lastly, I was going to talk a little bit about like impact programs in nonprofits. So for instance, the organization I work for, Center for Documentary Studies, has been really prioritizing racial equity work at the center. And as they were like kind of looking into it, they're reaching out to different like organizers and consultants. They're also realizing that like this is the impact they want. They have like a set of goals they want to accomplish as an institution, where it's like sort of it's an impact center. All of these are impact centered goals, right? from the racial equity lens. And then they're at a point where they realize that they need, it's kind of like needs to be implemented, kind of like a campaign all across the institution. And they actually just created a new position to bring someone on as a full-time position who's going to run this, like, this impact-centered goals that they have. So, there are those kinds of opportunities too. If you like, I mean, it is like, obviously, if you want to get into this nonprofit industrial complex, but like if there are organizations that you really resonate with the mission and the work they're doing, there are ways to kind of even like, I guess, like market your stuff to implement like their impact goals. So yeah, those are some of the things, like some of the ways you can take these skills and bring them into the world and hopefully get paid for them. Do you have any questions about any of that? We have about 10 minutes left. And then, oh yeah, I want to talk a little bit about grant and like where, so like, as I'm saying, all of these different opportunities, where is the money, right? Do people actually have the money to pay you?
That's the question.
Right. So, I don't know, like personally, I feel like this field is going to grow, even though like, the fellowship that we were part of in the very last retreat, the director, the person who is leading the fellowship was sharing that how this field is kind of, it's part of the reason the fellowship was created, to create this, the impact producing field, a sustainable career. But like locally and internationally, they're realizing that it's not possible. Like they were realizing that the people who would fund it, funders, are not really like that convinced to invest that much money into that as a career. So our fellowship also didn't continue. I think they didn't have enough funds to continue the fellowship. But having said that, in any grant application for documentaries nowadays, you can, people are always adding a line item for impact campaign, which includes the compensation for hiring an impact producer. And these are some of the films that had a very like successful impact campaign. That this is also a screenshot from the Impact Guide website. And this was the budget for their campaign budget. So for the movie Bully, it was like $2.6 million budget that went on. I don't know. Yeah, I think that it was last updated in 2019. So that campaign, like they were doing, implementing the impact campaign for like 8 years. Bagot had 102,000, which was also similarly like 9 years. So this is a British film. So you can see these are like really, really big numbers, right? So these are very high budget films, but just to give you a sense of that. And then I know that like I said, in the organization I'm working at, they were able to like convince where they're getting their funding from, that it is important to have a full-time person that's constantly doing this impact-oriented work. Yeah, that's kind of all I had in terms of applying impact producing in the field. Any questions about any of that?
If I can just add, Rahi,
Sure.
So in the folder that we'll be sharing with you also, my mentor Jin Yu Kim shared with me her sample contract for when you're working with an impact producer. And for an impact producer, if you're full-time, sometimes, for example, just like to like so that folks know how you can charge people and rates, I think it's also important for us to know how much people are getting paid. I worked at an impact campaign for a film about the Philippines, and there was this organization that was white-led that was like kind of like anchoring it also. And I'm like, y'all are getting paid more than me, and y'all not even Filipino, so I guess just kind of highlighting the the different dynamics, right, that happen in these spaces, and how can we make sure that we are getting the rates that we are like so qualified to get. Some impact producers, for example, charge $100 per hour for doing like a particular scope of work, right? Like part-time. For example, with the work that I'm doing right now, I charge $50 per hour for about 20 hours per week. And like just being able to assert yourself. When I started off, I used to charge $25 per hour. And then when Rahi and I were at the International Documentary Association's conference, they have an impact producer sustainability survey findings. And $25 was the lowest rate that I had actually. And they were like, don't charge yourself $25 per hour because you're underselling all of us, so not in that point, not to that extent, but, like make sure to like, yeah, like just to assert your rate that you are worthy of. And you can also do this work part-time, right? Sometimes the impact strategist and the impact coordinator are different people. So you can have like a full-time job, and then, in the afternoons, you're working on the impact campaign for another film. And then that's how you kind of build your street creds, with other filmmakers. And you don't have to know how to edit. You don't have to know how to hold a camera to be able to be an impact producer. Organizers, communications people are so well equipped to be impact producers.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that like, the fellowship that we both are in, as you can tell by now, that it's really the intersection of film and organizing coming together, right? So like the filmmaker is making the film, right? And the person who's like coming in as an impact producer really doesn't need to be a filmmaker, right? You just, because you are doing all these strategy meetings with the filmmaker, with the partners and everything, you just need to come in and know what the artistic vision is and learn and take your experience. I would say mostly like the more organizing and kind of like leading strategies and that kind of experience you have, the more actually like you are more suited for becoming an impact producer than you having like a long history of like filmmaking experience, right? So because what they're looking for is not for you to come and make another film with them. They're looking for you to come and like bring in your organizing skills and apply it to the film. So like the fellowship we're part of, like the people they were looking for, people who probably have filmmaking background and maybe don't, but definitely have some kind of social justice oriented work experience. And so we did have folks in our cohort that actually were not filmmakers. So just to highlight that. And then, different film teams have different goals, different change strategies. Therefore, they need different expertise, right? So just if you think about like the content of the film, if you have expertise in that issue, then you're also like a really good asset to the team, right? So if it's like reproductive right, a film about reproductive right, and you have done a lot of organizing work in that field, like who better to come into that team than someone has experience in that. So,
I know that we are at 4 p.m., but maybe just to wrap up, are there any other questions that folks have? Yes, Amrit.
Hi, so I have one last question. This was something like I thought of like 20 minutes ago, so I completely forgot the question, but I remember it was surrounding, damn, I should have written it down. I should have written it down. I think, Rahi, when you were talking about, oh, crap. I can't remember, but the question was along the lines of, do you need to, as an impact producer, do you need to have experience with the topics of the film? Like, let's say you're doing a film on the prison industrial complex, or like you're helping someone with that film. Would you have had to have prior experience or like done a lot of research beforehand on it? Or can you jump on with the experience you have in organizing and kind of start doing work on the film then, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, for sure. I can share what I think, and then Seth, chime in if you have any thoughts around it. I personally feel like as an impact producer, I would like to take projects that I do have one, either like I'm passionate about or I'm interested in or have some experience in, right? So it could be that I don't have experience in, but something that I'm super passionate about, and I know that like I will be like I will do whatever it takes to get me, get up to speed in doing that. But generally, how it has been from what I have observed in the field is that when folks are like, let's say there's an open call for an impact producer, folks would connect other people that have experience in that issue. But obviously, like, because this field is so new, if there are like thousands of impact producers out there, there are like millions of issues, right? So we cannot have 1,000 people having experience in million issues. So it's definitely not a requirement, I would say. Mostly, I would say the skill sets of knowing how to lead an impact campaign, all the things that we went over. Is that what the steps are, like how to lead that process. You could apply it to any issues. I know, Seth, if you have anything else to.
Yeah, just to add on to what Rahi said, I think as Sonia would tell us also, some impact producers gravitate just towards an issue that they're familiar with. Other impact producers are all issues. For example, Picture Motion, Together Films, they're distributor / impact producing nonprofit organizations. Pieces Loud, they work on issues from gun violence, sometimes immigrant rights. So some of these organizations work on a plethora of issues. On my end, I prefer, like Rahi said, I prefer to work on issues that I have worked on in the past, whether it's immigrant rights, LGBTQ issues, Filipino experiences. Part of it also is, if you're an impact producer, your relationships, it's actually one of the things that you're being paid for, right? So maybe you're like, someone at an organization that the filmmaker wants to be part of the impact campaign, but they don't know anyone there. You sending out an email there, that might look like it's like an email, but the fact that you have that relationship that you built, in the course of your life, that's like $100 per hour kind of email kind of situation, So on my end, when we think about rates, we shouldn't just think about rates in terms of how much time we spend, but whether we do the work, right? Or whether we accomplish the goal that's listed in the work. And that in itself is one way I think about compensation. And also, if you don't have relationships in a particular field, that's kind of like where the impact producer, the impact strategist and impact coordinator kind of comes in. If the impact, maybe like you can serve as an impact coordinator, where the impact strategist is the one that's kind of doing a lot of the work with coordinating with the partners initially, and then once you do the follow-ups, that's where the impact coordinator comes in. So the relationships might not be there, but you're helping move the work forward.
I had one more thing to share, but I want to be mindful of time. Are folks okay if we go maybe like just 5 more minutes over the time? Just to add to what Seth was saying, that sometimes it makes me really nervous, like this field, because I feel like white people always know how to like take, like anything new comes up, how to like use it to their benefit or whatever. So like, like Seth was saying, if let's say the filmmaker doesn't have expertise in that much expertise in the issues that the film is about, they would bring in like someone, either from the community or something like that. So like I can totally see how a white person making a film about that's like not their story to tell, and like using the excuse of, oh, I have an impact producer, like maybe it's about like undocumented story, right? And they would say like, oh, I can make the film because I have an impact producer who's undocumented, So it really makes me nervous. And I would say like, I don't know. I don't know what's the solution to that. But the point I was trying to say is that, for instance, like, I don't know, like, it is like the impact campaign, impact producer, or the implementer is the relation building person, right? So like I'm thinking that, like, as a South Asian person, as a queer person, as, you know, undocumented person, as a Muslim person, like, you know, I would say I would be open to working in issues that involve any of those, identities, like a Muslim story, right? I just the fact that, like, I mean, it's the, you know, there's the whole conversation about who should tell the story. So the filmmaker definitely needs to shouldn't use it the way I was describing before, bringing the impact, tokenizing the impact producer, right? But if they're not doing it that way, it's like impact producer is the person going into the community. So if it's a film about Muslim people, I would know the culture. I would the people would feel safer to communicate with me, build relationships with me, right? So that's also like your identity can also be like a skill set in some way, with your cultural experiences in leading a campaign.
I have kind of a follow-up question, if that's okay.
For sure.
I feel like I've been in a lot of situations too, right? Where I have the really, like, you know, it's like a white filmmaker, and I have relationships with like a lot of immigrant like nonprofits or something that have been doing the work, like campaigning for a long time. Have you ever had to like manage or navigate that kind of situation where like maybe the film goes in a different route, or like there's some like problematic things within the film? Like I think that when you pointed it out, Rahi, that makes me so uncomfortable, because I feel like I've been in that situation, and oftentimes I maybe like don't know how to navigate that. And it's just like it's a very difficult kind of situation to be in. So like, do you have any like tips, or has anyone actually on the call had to like navigate something along those lines? Because they are your relationships, right? And it's yeah, like your relationships that have taken you like a long time to really foster and that you really cherish, right?
Absolutely. So did you want to respond?
Sorry, is the question, Claudia, like you have relationships and then there's this filmmaker who wants to leverage your relationship. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it's more, yeah, like along the lines of how Rahi was mentioning, like being tokenized as like an impact producer. Like how have you, or have you been in any situation like that where you had to like address that? Have you had to kind of like, how do you I mean, I know that's like a huge question, right? But like, how do you navigate that instance where I think potentially, right, when you start off with like filmmakers, you know, it feels like the right fit, but as you're kind of working along and like within a whatever campaign or what, you know, whatever it is that you're working on, it just doesn't feel like that anymore. Have you ever had to like, or like just more like, how do you navigate those kinds of situations, or have you had any situations like that?
Yeah, so for example, with me, when I do scopes of work, I do them in 6-month terms, so that if I want to dip out at the end of the 6 months, I'm a dip out. You know, I'm gonna support you the best as I can, but it's not gonna be definite. I think that's also important that when you develop an impact campaign, you develop a contract, because impact campaigns are social justice issues, and social justice issues take a lifetime. You know, you don't want to be like the filmmaker to be expecting you to work on something for like 10 years and you're like, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. So just making sure to set those boundaries and parameters before you dive into it. When I also speak with filmmakers, I choose what projects I do. If I don't feel comfortable with a project, I don't do anything about it, you know, or I don't respond to them if they're reaching, not so much don't respond to them, but tell them, hey, I'm busy, you know, like a polite way to like say no, you know, or also, and also when I start meeting with the producer, the filmmaker, I tell them, you know, the issue that that we're dealing with deals with the community that I come from. So I'm gonna be honest with you that if I don't feel comfortable with anything, you know, I need you to know that I'm gonna like let you know, and I need you to be responsive in terms of how you're gonna navigate, you know, the points that I'm raising. Right. So I think just being communicative is one aspect for me that's important. And also those scopes of work that's time bound, so that if you need to transition from the project, yeah, I don't know though if this is specific just for impact producing. I feel like it can apply to any field. I don't know if Rahi, if you had any other thoughts on that.
No, yeah, I think that that's what it would be, and yeah, it does apply. I feel like as us being like just in the BIPOC community, I'm pretty sure we all have been tokenized in various ways, just to like free consultancy and like, oh, you're Muslim, you know, you probably know something about that. Just, you know, like just free, like, you know, just even getting our thoughts on something, right? But not like, or taking our ideas, taking our advice or whatever, and just, you know, completely discarding us after that, right? So that's like a common practice. But like I said, like clear communication, like Seth was saying, clear communication is key. And like, so yeah, if it's like an unpaid thing, I would say, you know, like for the longest time, I would have this like guilt feeling of like, oh my gosh, like someone reached out to me and I know they're doing this problematic thing. And if I'm just completely silent and just like completely step away from it, then I'm like, it's also like in Islam, like, or I guess many religions, like see no, like if you witness a sin, it's a sin or something like that. So it's kind of like, I feel like if I'm witnessing this and I'm aware of it, I'm not doing anything about it, that like doesn't feel good. So then what I do, you know, like just share resources, as much resources as I can in terms of ethics, in terms of decolonial practices, and like, you know, just things that they could like use their energy and like learning and researching on their own, but like kind of guide them in the way that it could potentially like resolve it. But sometimes, you know, you can't stop them. But if they are yeah yeah, like if they are asking for consultation, then you charge them and give them a rate, and within the consultation, you know, you could even recommend that, hey, you shouldn't be making the film, or like, you know, or that, you know, get like, you can make the film, maybe you can be a producer, but get all the creative roles that goes into filmmaking, needs to be someone, you know, that's more suited to tell the story. Right.
Thank you. No, yeah, that's great.
No,
No,
that's a really good question. Anything else? Okay, we're like 10 minutes over. Well, thank you all so much for being so patient. Hopefully this was helpful. We're definitely going to share all the resources, and also like I'm pretty sure Seth is planning the same thing. I want to be able to you know, dive deep into it more and be able to offer more workshops like this, and hopefully a second version or more advanced version where we like go deeper into different case studies, and like, you know, maybe even workshops on how to do a brain trust or stuff like that. So hopefully there will be more of those.
Yes, and I'll also be sharing the recording of this call so that folks can check it out, and feel free to forward it to folks that you think would benefit. Actually, I don't know, actually, with the recording, maybe not the recording, but maybe the materials, just because, you know, we don't want folks to be identified. And in the folder that I'll be sharing with the resources, again, just a reminder to please not share the ones that are indicated for private purposes.
Yeah, feel free to like share notes from the video, but maybe not the video.
Yeah, I look ugly today, so no, please don't.
No.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Alrighty, everyone. Thank you for joining us from Durham to Louisiana to LA. Appreciate you all so much, and thank you, Rahi, for leading us in this space.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next time being with you all.
Yes.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And reach out to us also directly if you have any more questions.
Thank you all so much. This was so powerful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care, y'all.
Take care, everyone. Hugs.